Awesome. Welcome everybody to the first of our monthly emergency preparedness classes through the West Adams Neighborhood Council. This is a really awesome historic moment for us to be able to get everybody together during these difficult times, to get to know each other, build some relationships, have some fun, and learn some very important information. We have on our side helping us out with this event, actually incredibly integrally to the event. We're just the hosts. We don't have all the goods. The goods are coming with Chin, Lise, our Chief Moore over here, and all of the entire support team from CERT. There's Lise waving her hand and Chin over there as well. And we're going to hand it over to our experts who know all about emergency response and exactly what we're going to do to make this thing happen for our neighborhood. And as soon as they give the introduction, we're going to pass it to the man of the hour, Conrad Starr, who's going to be leading us through the full presentation today. Before we do that, just some quick housekeeping. I'm going to share a quick screen here. The date is brought to you by the West Adams Neighborhood Council. If you are interested in events like this or helping out the community, getting more involved in other forms of outreach or education, or simply getting together to have some fun, we really recommend that you check us out on our website, westadamsnc.org. We have elections coming up. There is going to be an information session on that. You'll be getting an email at the end of this with all this information. So no need to write anything down, remember anything. We're going to send it to you, make sure you have it all right away. But the basic takeaway is that we have open spots. So please, please, please get involved, learn more about what we're doing. There's a lot of opportunity to be able to help each other out during this difficult time and just to stay connected and to know that people have your back. We have your back. That's what we're here for. And without further ado, I will stop sharing this. And Conrad, if you want to, or sorry, Chin, right? You're taking us off today. Okay, Chin, passing it to you.
And a good afternoon to everyone. And thank you for joining us for this first neighborhood team program session, the first of 6 taking place here in the West Adams area. We are very glad to have you here on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time, but I am going to introduce myself and say that I am the South Bureau Coordinator for the Community Emergency Response Team. I am also one of the directors, the South Bureau Director of the Neighborhood Team Program. And just so you know, the Neighborhood Team Program started right here in Battalion 18. So we're really proud to have West Adams involved. A couple other people I'd like to recognize very quickly are Lisa Pham, our CERT in charge on this one, who really worked with the Neighborhood Council to put this together. Her team of her very small West Adams team of Freddie Muse and Toby, and Toby, whose last name I'm forgetting, which is scaring me, who worked on this as well in terms of outreach and other things. And of course, Conrad Starr, who is going to really take you through a great presentation today. And you guys are going to come out with a lot of interesting new ideas and questions and things, and we look forward to that. But I want to turn the floor over very quickly to Chief Jamie Moore of LAFD South Bureau. And I'm so glad to have him here with us because LAFD, the Los Angeles City Fire Department, is a very integral part of the CERT program. In fact, they're the ones who created the CERT program. There's CERT programs everywhere, but it started right here in Los Angeles back in 1985. And for us, we wouldn't be able to do all the things we do, including today's presentation, without their help and support. So Chief Moore is here to say a few words. And Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Well, thank you, Chin. And hello, everybody from the West Adams neighborhood. It's nice to be on this beautiful sunny afternoon. I've been in touch with a lot of my friends from all over the nation this week with the various things going on. For instance, several chief officers down in Texas who are experiencing a deep freeze have reached out, sharing their concerns and what they're battling. And obviously they have heartache to hear that we have such beautiful weather over the weekend. This is the most people I've had in my home since the COVID pandemic started. So it's nice to welcome you all to my house. It's kind of nice to be on with everybody. Unfortunately, I think this is the way we all interact anymore. I want to thank Chin. I want to thank the West Adams Neighborhood Council or neighborhood for having me on. Chief Villanueva was hoping to be on, but he got pulled away at the last minute. And so unfortunately, we can't have Chief Villanueva, who is our deputy chief in the South Bureau. For those of you who aren't familiar with Operation South Bureau with the Los Angeles Fire Department, I'll just fill you in a little bit. We cover everything from Century City, which borders right up there along, well, obviously your neighborhoods, but up to the Beverly Hills border, and we go all the way down as far south as the harbor. So we cover San Pedro. Many of you may have heard we had a plane crash into a semi truck yesterday, which was unfortunate. We actually had a couple CERT members who were on scene that worked down in the harbor that were able to help at that time. I'll tell you, CERT is such an important and integral part of our city. A lot of people take for granted the skills they have and what they can offer in times of emergency. As Chin mentioned, the CERT program there in West Adams started 10 years ago in Battalion 18. And since launching citywide, the program has gained a lot of interest from area neighborhoods and councils like the West Adams Neighborhood Council, who's obviously hosting today. The program is designed to allow everyone, not just our CERT people, to join, to gain skills, knowledge that allow them an opportunity to share what the skills they have and to learn new skills, which will help them strive and survive a unfortunate emergency. And nowadays, like I said, our friends in Texas who are experiencing a deep freeze, you better believe that their CERT members are actively engaged in trying to help one another. They have no power. They've had no water for several days now. And obviously that's going to lead to emergencies. And it's dependent upon not just the first responders in that area, law enforcement and fire, to assist in their time of need, but it's those individuals who have taken the time to learn new skills and to share the skills that they already have to help them overcome the adversity of such a disaster or an emergency as what they're involved in. This program, it comes with the support of the Los Angeles Fire Department and your Battalion 18 Community Emergency Response Team. The LAFD, obviously, we offer courses in CERT, which is 7 courses. They're free to the public, but it's courses like these that really help you learn what you can do in your community and how you can help one another in your time of need. If you have any type of need for training, please reach out to us. Our CERT programs are available to everybody. We do them both in English and in Spanish. Yo hablo español y también les puedo ayudar en español. For those of you who didn't understand what I said I speak Spanish. I actually speak it fluently, and I'd be more than happy to help those individuals who speak Spanish if they have some questions or some concerns. But most importantly, I want to thank the CERT program for what they're doing with regards to mapping. They're identifying hazards in their neighborhood, areas of concern, and they're bringing it to our attention, and we're working together to actually address those areas in the event that an emergency pops up. Now, somebody asked, I saw in the chat group that somebody asked, what is CERT? CERT actually stands for community. It's CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. It actually started with the Los Angeles Fire Department. Believe it or not, it's a program that now is worldwide. And it started with some of our chiefs who responded to a major earthquake. And from there, they learned the importance of what the community could do in trying to help one another in their time of an emergency when first responders are actually overcome with the amount of calls that are coming in. So it allows people to kind of gain some sort of stabilization when that initial emergency occurs. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I didn't see anything else pop up in the chat room, but I'm going to be on for a little bit. I look forward to hearing the conversations that take place. And I want to thank everybody again from the West Area Chamber and Neighborhood Council, and also Chin and everybody from the South Bureau CERT team. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Chief Moore. It's great to have you here. It's always great to have the LAFD, really back our programs and really show how much support is out there. One more person I want to give a big shout out to is my colleague, Patrick Potts Forbes. He and I are really working to get this program launched citywide. It's launched citywide, but we're working really hard with our group to spread it all over the city from border to border. And I keep reaching for my neck because I am wearing a non-regulation shirt today. Don't hold it against me. Just a little conscious of that. With that said, I'm going to hand it back to John, and I think we can actually get this party started.
There you go. All right, folks, we're going to get going. Please do drop in your name, neighborhood into this form here, and it's very importantly going to capture your email, and through that sign-in sheet we're going to be able to get you the recap of today's event and the follow-up links and all the questions and answers and everything, all the good stuff. So make sure you drop your email in there. Without further ado, Conrad, man of the hour, we're going to pass it over to you to take us through the journey of this first session on personal and family preparedness.
All right, can you hear me?
Sound good?
Okay, good. Wonderful. Well, I should be sharing my screen now. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Here we go. So Chen told you that we are going to have ideas and questions. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be too much information and it's going to be a little bit too fast. And that's okay, because this is an ongoing process. There is really no completion point to preparedness. There is just an ongoing effort to constantly think through what you need to do to be prepared and refresh your skills. And so those of us who I know on this meeting, many of you have been through similar sessions, but we go back and we remind ourselves. So like I said, I'm going to go a little fast. And you may be curious as we sort of hopefully come out of a pandemic disaster, why I'm going to focus a lot on earthquakes today. Well, that's because preparing for an earthquake prepares you for just about any other disaster. We happen to not be in a tsunami zone. So we won't touch on that. And everything that I talk about in earthquakes, I think will be useful to you, whether the disaster is wildfire or a major power outage or even a cyber attack, for example. I'll just tell you a couple of things about me. I live up here at Wilshire and Mansfield. I'm on my neighborhood association. That's kind of how I got started in this community stuff. And soon after that, in 2017, I did the CERT training. And soon after that, I thought, well, let's go to Eventbrite and see how I can get involved. So I did some activities in Battalion 2, where Patrick is from. And those were really helpful. And I thought, well, let's do more. So I signed up for a ham radio training, and that's when I met Chin. And I've come to know a lot of the people in this group through that. But what's most important to me is to see names and faces that I'm not familiar with. And that's because we all need to be spreading the word, because what you'll hopefully realize, if you don't already know it, is we are going to be relying on one another. So in today's brief talk, and let me restart my clock so I know how long I've been going. We're going to look at some of our risks. We'll look at some maps and see maybe what some of the geologic type risks are and seismic risks. We'll talk about structural risks a little bit, and then some non-structural risks, like what can fall on you that you shouldn't have put over your bed, for example. And then we'll talk about the possible outcomes after an earthquake or other disaster, and what kind of considerations you're gonna need to make, depending on whether you're going to be able to stay where you are, or maybe you have to evacuate. And then just touch a little bit on some financial preparedness. So as you can see, it's a pretty big list of items on the docket today. So let's go ahead and get started and see if my clicker is working. Okay, good. So we already went over the overview. Let's just jump into, and we talked a little bit about us, but as I go through this, think about questions that you probably don't have to tell yourself to think about. Do I have kids? Am I thinking about a family here? Am I thinking about my pets? What does it mean to me to be prepared? And who do I need to prepare for? And who is part of my household? And who would be part of my block or my community? And hopefully that'll expand as you work with the folks on this call and your neighbors. So we'll save the questions until the end. So please bear with me. Hopefully I'll cover a lot of the questions that you have as we move through the slides. I mentioned that we'll all be depending on our neighbors and our own preparedness. It's a fact that 911 is going to be overloaded immediately after a major disaster like an earthquake. And pretty soon the phone lines are going to be down. You probably can't even get a message through. And our first responders, well, there's not really enough for 4 million people, or more than that in Los Angeles. We have 3,000 first responders in the city per shift, roughly. So that's fire department plus police department. And if you do the math, you realize, we're on our own. And they've told us that because their first priority is to assess their own safety and the safety of their apparatus. And then their next priority is to determine where the mass casualty incidents might be. And that would be things like hospitals and schools, where they have the potential to do the most good in the shortest amount of time, save the most lives, basically. So little old me and my 12-unit apartment building, not going to be a priority. So that's why I'm preparing, and I will need the folks around me to be part of that design. We already introduced CERT, the neighborhood team program, which I don't think we talked too much about, but that's a great way for us to start sharing some of our knowledge with people who maybe don't have time to do the CERT training right away. They can still be members of our team. And then there's some other layers like the Readier LA Neighborhood program that I believe is part of this series, and block organization. If you've got Neighborhood Watch, hey, great, expand upon that. By the way, I apologize to the interpreter for how fast I'm talking. I'll try and slow down a little bit. So damage and disruption. What are we expecting in terms of damage and disruption? Well, first let's talk about what we are expecting, and that's a big earthquake, which you've heard described as the big one. They happen about every 150 years on the San Andreas Fault. And we haven't had one since 1857, a big one, and we haven't had really any activity for the last 80 years directly on the San Andreas Fault of any serious magnitude. Now, what I learned in a little training or an information session at Caltech was that the maximum earthquake magnitude that we might expect is an 8.3. And I'm going to guess no one in this meeting has ever been in an earthquake anywhere near that. So the shaking potential for that, which more than magnitude, it's just the extent to which we're shaking, that's going to be like nothing anybody's ever felt. Hopefully it won't happen to us, but it probably is going to. So a little quote from the Mayor's Resilient Los Angeles book from 2018, just to kind of put that in context. I'll just read the red part, that unlike the 7-second Northridge earthquake, we're planning for a 2-minute earthquake, okay, that's felt for thousands of square miles. So this is big. And when they ran the San Andreas Fault scenario, the US Geological Survey and Caltech several years ago, they said it's going to be, not only billions in damages, but 1,600 fires, 1,800 deaths, and 50,000 injured. So, okay, 1,800 deaths, not so bad, right? But the injuries, we'll talk a little bit more about later. Beyond that, the disruption involves, interstates 10 and 15 being completely blocked, all of our water pipes broken, our power out. I mean, and it's going to take at least 18 months to restore all of this stuff. So, preparing now, there's a good argument for it, right? And city services, of course, will be terribly disrupted, not just police and fire, but everything that we depend on, trash pickup, our sewers, libraries and airports, and the list goes on. And then, of course, there's private sector disruption. It's funny, I put this Lime scooter in there a long time ago, and they pulled out during COVID. So there you go. But hospitals, gas stations. So, but what's going to happen to you? Well, there's two basic possibilities. You're either going to be dead or you're going to still be alive. And we already saw there's not going to be a whole lot of people who lose their lives directly from the earthquake, just about 1,800 according to that scenario. And in fact, Dr. Lucy Jones, who's commonly known as the earthquake lady, she said you're about as likely to be shot by a toddler as die in an earthquake. So is that good news? Well, really the scenarios that we can prepare for are whether we're going to be injured or not injured and how we would respond, whether we're going to be together with our loved ones at the time of such a disaster, or if we're going to need to regroup with them because we're separated from them? And are we going to be able to stay in our homes? Are we going to have to evacuate? So one figure that I think is really important to keep in mind ourselves, and maybe to keep reminding, our elected officials about, is the fact that we're going to have a lot of people displaced after the big one. And there's not a whole lot that we can do individually about that, as we lose housing due to an earthquake, but we can certainly put pressure on our elected officials to, anytime they're reviewing building codes, to try and build for resilient buildings, resilient design, so that people can move back into the buildings afterwards. And that's not, right now our buildings are really set up to keep us alive. All the retrofits, or most of them, I should say, that we've undergone since Northridge, those are designed to preserve life, and that's very important. But obviously, having a place to go back to is secondary, but very, very high importance as well. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about, oh, my clicker is, okay, here we go, our hazards. So let's look at some maps here. So here's the West Adams Neighborhood Council boundaries, bordered on the top by the 10 freeway and, roughly La Cienega to Crenshaw and then Obama Boulevard, right? And we've got some earthquake hazards right off the bat. Since we're not in a room, I can't ask for a show of hands, but who thinks they know what these little lines are on the bottom left of the screen? Well, those are faults. And this is an image from the Ridgecrest earthquake, or taken soon after. This is what happens on earthquake faults. The earth can slip or shift. And so that's why we don't build new buildings on top of faults anymore. So yes, of course, they're very dangerous. And it's a good idea to know where the faults are near where you live. But there are other hazards as well. You see this kind of weird brownish green color on the bottom left. That is landslide risks. And by the way, I've taken most of these images that you're going to see in the mapping from ArcGIS. They're publicly available maps that are put together by state, city, county folks as part of their own surveys. And so I've just kind of layered some of them on top of the neighborhood council map that I created. So landslide, well, what does that look like in an earthquake? It looks pretty bad. This is a Northridge earthquake picture. Now, in the slide that we just saw, that landslide area, that's part of Kenneth Hahn Park, so there aren't a lot of structures right there. But it's still good to know where the landslide risk is. Now we've got a huge green blob. That is what's called liquefaction. And liquefaction is areas that were once river or lake beds, basically, and they are high sand content, and they behave a little bit like water. I should say they can behave like water after a major or during a major earthquake, during major shaking. So it can cause the soil to sort of give way, and things like this can happen. This is an image from Balboa Boulevard in Granada Hills, and this was during the 1994 Northridge earthquake. So obviously you wouldn't want to be caught on top of that, fall into the earth, you wouldn't want your house built there. But as you can see, it can also lead to gas leaks and fires and explosions that come from that. And we saw a lot of liquefaction damage in the Marina District in San Francisco after the Loma Prieto earthquake in 1989. And some of that liquefaction area actually had some of the oldest examples of soft story apartments or soft story buildings. Now, we're probably more familiar with the soft story buildings that we had in Northridge and that we still have, these buildings where the cars kind of drive right under. And you've probably noticed that a lot of these soft story buildings are currently undergoing retrofits, which is a great thing. Just something to be aware of is that this retrofit program, which is a legal requirement of this in the city of Los Angeles, it's not instant. They were given a couple of years to, bring out an engineer to determine if there was a need to retrofit, and then I think 5 more years to actually to do those retrofits. So last I checked, which was in late 2019, about 2,600 soft story retrofits had been completed, according to the mayor's office. But there were about 10,000 that still needed to be completed. So we want those to keep going. And I went ahead and used an old spreadsheet that I've got of some of those addresses that were on the soft story list. Doesn't mean that the building definitely needs a retrofit, but it was part of the city's assessment. And so just going by the zip code where West Adams is located, West Adams almost takes up the whole zip code. I was able to compile this list. So if you see your address on here, you might want to check with your building management as to whether, as to where retrofitting stands for your building. So as we zoom out, we see some of these same hazards that we talked about. And then there's also wildfire risk, which I talked about. Now, that's not a surprise that in Kenneth Hahn Park there that we would have wildfire risk. It's the case in all of the hills. But this becomes significant for us, not only because we could have disasters in West Adams that are specifically because of wildfires, but when we have an earthquake, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the risk of, well, fires can spread very easily. Obviously, with emergency services and the fire department being spread very thin, they're not going to be able to tend to everything. So if there is risk very close to you, then you should probably give that some thought in your preparations. And as we zoom out even further, we see that, you know, it's dangerous everywhere. It's almost hard to comprehend, right? And then not only that, we've got all these bridges surrounding us. And we know from the Northridge earthquake that all of these freeway bridges collapsed. And if you were here at the time, you probably have vague memories of driving on streets you'd never been on before, trying to get somewhere without taking that freeway that was shut down for 6 months to a year. Well, there's good news, and that is that the Caltrans bridges today are seismically safer than our city bridges. But you're still probably taking some city bridges, and those have not necessarily been retrofitted the way that the Caltrans bridges have. So having a backup plan for how to get around, especially if you have a regular commute, having different ways to get to and from the places that you like to go to or that you have to go to, work, school, grandma's house, hairdresser, it's a good idea to have that in your mind. And also not to always be dependent on a web-based map service like Apple or Google Maps, because that may not be working for you. And we'll talk a little more about that later. And then, of course, you want to also keep your car gassed up. You know, don't go under half a tank. That's the rule of thumb, right? Because you're going to need some of that gasoline in an emergency. I put a little tag in the corner of the screen. This is an image that I took directly from the fire department's 2019 emergency preparedness booklet. And that is available on the CERT website, which is cert-la.com. So you can download this awesome book. It's like 60 pages long, and it's going to help you come up with your own plan, because that's the plan that you really need, not someone else's checklist. You need your own checklist that is customized for your life. So you'll see some more images from this book as we go through. So this is a good time too, since we're just talking about keeping your car gassed up. Let's talk about our first emergency kit, okay? Your car kit. Now, you know, maybe it's your bus kit or your bicycle kit. I ride a bike just about everywhere. But these are the things that you might want to keep with you. Some of them you definitely should have with you. Some minimal first aid, right? Maybe gloves in case, you know, things are too hot or too sharp. A flashlight, or it could be a bike light, right? Some hygiene products, a roll of toilet paper, that sort of thing. And remember, your car may be able to get out of where it's parked, but then it may not. You saw those Northridge earthquake pictures with the cars crushed by the building. Maybe those cars saved somebody's life when that building came down, who knows? But if this gate in this picture, or if this gate is down, it may not be a priority for the building to raise that gate so that you can get out. But you've got your kit in your car, right? And maybe it's in a backpack. Maybe you can just throw that on your back and work on getting to the people that the people that you care about, your loved ones that you want to get home to. And we talked about Google Maps a moment ago. They have an offline map feature. So if you have Google Maps on your phone, go into the settings, and tell it that you want to enable offline maps. And you can even draw a map that is the shape and size. Well, I think it's just a square rectangular shape, but it covers the territory that's important to you. So for me, all my loved ones are in the map that I download, and you just have to download it like every 6 months. I think it disappears after a year if you don't open it up from time to time. I just have a reminder in my calendar once a month, open the map, and I do it on my iPad and I do it on my phone. So looking at the maps again, it's also good just to note who the fire stations are that serve West Adams. And so that would be 68 on the north, 94 on the south, and 34 just on that little piece on the east. And as you can see, their boundaries are bigger than West Adams. And especially in the case of 94, I mean, looking at that right there, they've got a lot of area that might be a big problem for them after an earthquake. So just another way to reinforce the idea that they're not coming to help you right away. And it's nothing on them. It's just the reality. I also want to touch just briefly on floods, because this can happen. If you've been in LA for any number of years, you've seen some major rain. And so there are old flood projections for our area, which are the 100 and 500-year flood maps. And then there's actually some new flood projections that just came out in the last couple of years. So as you can see, West Adams, it does list flooding potential of moderate to severe throughout the area. So it's First Street flood factor, I think, is what you would Google. And certainly if you're thinking of moving to a place or buying property, I would recommend that you look at that First Street flood projection because with global warming, there have been some changes to flood predictions. You know, it seems like the 100-year event maybe comes a little more frequently these days. And speaking of bad things that can happen with water, there are also dam inundation threats. Now, I'm showing you this because if you ever hear on the radio or the news that Silver Lake Reservoir Dam is giving way, or Mulholland or Sepulveda, Lower Franklin, or Hanson Dam, those all converge in West Adams and in my neighborhood as well. So there is a risk there. Hopefully it's very slight, but it's just something to be aware of. So again, I've bombarded you with all of this this fire and brimstone, all the terrible stuff that can happen. So let's just take a breath and just go back to today, where none of these things are happening. There's no pandemic visible on the map because it's invisible, right? And let's start talking about some of our hazards. So we'll start with structural hazards. That's buildings. That's your house. That's your office. And we talked a little bit about soft story hazards already, so we won't go into that. Now, some of us are lucky enough to own our house, so we can actually make some decisions that might help our building from being red tagged after an earthquake. And one of those decisions is to brace and bolt your foundation. There is a grant program open to Californians that opens usually in the last few months of the year. It's a lottery. All you have to do is go to earthquakebracebolt.com. Maybe someone can put that in the chat for me, earthquakebracebolt.com, and just tell them that you want to be on the notification list. A neighbor of mine ended up spending only about $500 for several $1,000s worth of work bracing her home to the foundation. And that's one less household that's part of the displaced people potentially after an earthquake, right? So go ahead and sign up then, and they'll let you know when the lottery opens. And you don't have to spend any money to enter the lottery. It's after you find out that you're one of the lucky ones that you then can consult with a contractor on this. So moving along rather quickly, we'll talk about non-structural hazards. And this is something that we all have control over, right? It's the things in our home or in our office that can fall on us, that can injure us. Well, first, let's reinforce a very important message to drop, cover, and hold on. And we'll talk about the doorway thing in just a second. But essentially, you want to get as close to the ground as possible, because once you're on the ground, it's hard to fall to the ground, right? You want to cover your head. So if you've got a sturdy table, Since everything's dancing around in a major earthquake, that's why you want to hold on so that you're not bouncing around your place, and so that your furniture, hopefully, if it's bouncing around, you're bouncing around together. So what about this run to the doorway thing that I learned as a child, and many of you probably did? Well, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the 1857 Fort Tejon earthquake, but many of the structures were made of adobe, and they collapsed, not surprisingly, except for their wooden door frames. So indeed, those were the safest places to be in 1857 in an adobe structure. So if you live in that kind of house, by all means, get in the doorway. But otherwise, the door is opening and slamming shut, stuff is flying around. And how can you really protect your head and your neck and your eyes and your vital organs when you're trying to keep yourself in a doorway standing up, right? Marcy will remind you about this in the first aid training that's next, but find the safest place in all the rooms where you spend your life, okay? Your bedroom, your living room. Just go through a checklist. Where would I duck? Where would I drop? Where would I cover? What would I hold on to? And then keep in mind that even if you're immediately outside a building on your front porch, inside is probably going to be safer for you. And that's because these sorts of things don't tend to happen inside. Bricks and awnings and other things, decorative features falling off of the outside of a building. When reinforcing has been done on a building of unreinforced masonry, for example, that's to protect the inside. It's not to protect the outside, okay? And another great resource, I told you the fire department has this great PDF booklet, but there's also Earthquake Country Alliance, and they have a website that's got all sorts of great lists, and they'll talk about, you know, how folks, for example, using a walker or a wheelchair, or with other, you know, if you have diabetes, kind of what that checklist would entail to be safe, right? So, so I would encourage you to go there, but protecting your head, neck, and vital organs is essential. But wouldn't it be great if you actually had a little bit of advance notice and you knew an earthquake was coming? Well, you may have heard of Shake Alert LA or My Shake LA. They announced that with great fanfare when that app was put out a couple of years ago. They didn't make a big point of the fact when they turned it off, essentially. So you may still have it on your phone. You now want My Shake, the My Shake app. This is a statewide app, and this is what is being maintained. And it's available for iOS, and it's also available. It's available for Android as well. So go ahead and download the My Shake app as soon as you can. And by the way, there's a cool new app. I haven't used it yet. I have an Android. It's just on iOS right now, but it's called Harbor, and it'll talk you through some of your preparedness. So maybe someone wants to give that a test. Hello Harbor is, I think, how you look that up, and it'll create checklists for you that are customized to you in your situation. The FEMA website has some great downloads, and they have a good app, and so does Red Cross. But, you know, I would say instead of downloading every checklist and every booklet and every app that you can, just start working on your own checklist, because that's what you're really going to be relying on. Just back to the drop, cover, and hold on. You know, if you want further advice on, you know, what to do in different situations, books like the Earthquake Country Alliance's Staying Safe When the Earth Shakes go into that in detail. And I'll just say, if you're in a car and driving, you want to pull over to the side of the road. However, if you're going under a bridge, keep driving if it's safe to do so until you get to the other side of the bridge, or if you're under power wires or that sort of thing. And you can go ahead and activate your emergency brake as well, so that your car, if it gets hit, will be less inclined to collide with something else. And if you are lying in bed, what they say is you should lie face down in bed and cover your head with a pillow. And then you're protecting your neck and your head and your vital organs, and wait for the shaking to stop. Okay, so then after the shaking stops, hey, congratulations, you're still alive. And let's make sure that we are protecting ourselves first, so that we can then worry about protecting our loved ones. Okay, so just like on the airplane, you put your own mask off, you put your own mask on first. And so what you're going to do is ask yourself, am I okay? Am I in immediate danger? Is something about to fall on me? Or do I smell gas already? Is there fire? Is there smoke? And once you've made that assessment, which helps you get your bearings because your heart's racing, you've got tunnel vision, it's a very scary situation, then you want to start putting some protective gear on. So, you know, I always think, if I'm asleep, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to reach for my shoes that are right beside the bed. Okay, and they're actually kind of tied around the lamp that's next to my bed. And I've got some gloves in there, and I've got some goggles in there. And if I wore glasses, I would have the slightly expired prescription in there. And I've also got bike helmets, but I happen to have a CERT hard hat that's also within reach. And it looks a little something like this. This is my under the bed kit, and it's got all this great stuff in it, including a flashlight. It's got a glow stick. It's got a whistle, a belt, because, you know, you need a belt, right? And then I've got a crowbar under the bed as well. And the crowbar is in case you're trapped behind a door and the door won't open because the building has shifted. So hence a crowbar, lets you out. Maybe you've got an extra set of keys in there like I do, because where did I leave my keys? Well, now it's under all my furniture. So good thing I've got some keys here in these boots. And I've also got a power failure light. In the 1994 Northridge earthquake, it was pitch black because all the streetlights went out. My mini blinds did a great job of blocking out any residual outdoor light, and I couldn't see a thing. And it was only luck that kept me from stepping on broken glass as I went around looking for my flashlight. Well, now I've got a light that turns on as soon as the power goes out. And as you can see, this light that was available at one time at SOS Products in the Valley. It's only $11. It will come in handy. It also helps you know in the middle of the night, if your power goes out, that your power went out. So you can check on anything if you've got a CPAP machine, for example. So again, after the shaking stops, and you're safely able to leave the immediate area, get your whistle around your neck, because if there's a terrible aftershock and you are then trapped, you're going to need that whistle to call for help. And carry your flashlight with you, and go ahead and get your phone charger ready, and know where your go bag is. And we'll talk about your go bag in a minute. And if you've already been through your radio training, which is a couple months away for you guys, turn your radio on and start communicating with your neighbors. And of course, you don't have to wait for the training to join the radio net if it's going on in your area. And your AM/FM radio, not the kind that you use the internet to access, but the old timey kind where you just turn it on and it's a little scratchy. Well, there's a lot of channels that will be putting out important information for you, as well as any weather radio that you might have. And so after you've continued with that assessment of your property, you can also consider sending a text message out to people that you want to get vital information to, because trying to call them on the phone is a waste of your time and a waste of your battery, and it's probably not going to go through. But make sure you give them important information in that text, like where you are, who you're with, what time it is, because they may not get the message for a while, and there might be another bigger earthquake that comes after that. And if you have an out-of-town contact, go ahead and send them a text as well. And before all of this, designate an out-of-town contact, because it's going to be much easier for phone calls to get out of the city than those to come into the city. And then you can use them as a relay point with other people that you need to communicate with during that crisis time. And also get your pet crates ready, because if you have to evacuate, good to have your pets already locked up and ready to go. And if you're trapped, don't yell, don't scream, don't breathe in dust, don't lose your voice, don't use all your strength. Use a whistle, tap on something like a wall or a bar, crack open a glow stick, turn on your flashlight, or use your FRS radio to call for help. And when you do your Ryland training, you'll find out more about sort of that golden hour response and ways that you can help your neighbors at the block level. And of course, hopefully you'll do the Ryland program and you'll get one of these handy signs where one side tells people you need help, and the other side, which you can post in your window, will say, hey, I'm okay. Um, and if you've got people in either on your block or in your household who need special assistance, give some thought to that in advance, okay? Okay, so let's talk just briefly about fires. Well, they happen after earthquakes. They happened in Santa Monica, like this building. And the real threat is that the fires will spread from one building to the next, which is why natural gas shutoff, knowing how to shut off your gas, whether you're in a house or an apartment, is really essential. And that fire emergency prep booklet tells you what to do, but essentially it's a quarter turn. So I would encourage everyone after this talk to walk around their property, see where the gas is, see if you see something that looks like this, and just don't turn it off, but just know where it is and know where that valve is to turn it off. And remember, you only turn it off if you smell gas or if you hear gas. But once you turn it off, it has to stay off, because if you turn it back on, and any pilot lights are no longer lit, you're going to have a gas accumulation in your building, and that can lead to an explosion or fire. And you can also turn off gas at the individual appliances. Some buildings will have an emergency seismic shutoff valve. They should all automatically activate after an earthquake if they're working right, after a major earthquake if they're working right, and it's hard to turn them back. So remember that after an earthquake, your gas may be automatically shut off, especially if you see one of those red boxes. And I would advise you to look in the fire department book as well about power outages, but essentially don't light candles because there may be a gas leak. Candles and gas leaks are not good friends. They tend to get a little wild together, don't they? And of course, your food can go bad. So, maybe what you might do is, if you look on the right-hand side of my freezer, you'll see those ice packs. Those will keep your food cold a little while longer, right? And they'll go in a cooler if you need to take it with you. And power shut off, there's a procedure for that we won't go into, but I think part of your training later in the training will cover that. And of course, you can buy a USB solar charger like I did. I finally got one that worked. It's not terribly cheap, but I love the idea that I can charge my phone after an earthquake. It just means you got to download some Netflix in order to have something to watch, right? Okay, and then water shutoff is really important too, because you may have broken pipes in your building and you obviously don't want to have flooding, but additionally, you can have both broken sewer and broken water pipes side by side. And if those start to mix, the water may still be flowing into your house. So being able to shut off the water, and it's usually underground in front of your building, kind of on the parkway there. There's a little cover, a little concrete cover, and you lift it up and you see a bunch of bugs, and you got another valve that you just turn a quarter turn. That's how you're going to shut off your water. And I'm going to go back. If you have a water heater tank with a tank, then you are going to want to shut off that water, because that tank water is going to be probably good to drink, but you need to know how to tap it. So do a little bit of research on the internet. And of course, where fire is concerned, you want to make sure that you've got a fire extinguisher. And if, like me, you live in an apartment, you want to make sure that your landlord is actually servicing that fire extinguisher. And you can read that on the tags. It's got a punch out for the dates. And do the CERT training. You can find out how to actually use a fire extinguisher, and you can practice. And if you're not able to take the training, download that book and read up on how to use a fire extinguisher. And if you're a homeowner, buy several fire extinguishers and invert them once a month to get the chemicals inside, keep them from getting clogged, and replace them regularly. Now, non-structural mitigations, or keeping stuff from falling on us, basically is what we all can do. And so that's all the furniture in our house. Okay, I'm going to just show you a very quick video from a company that sells things in this field that I am not related to, but I was really impressed by this video. So let's see, is it starting? Yeah, it's starting. Okay, that was fun. Now let's go to someone's bedroom. Marcy will tell you the kitchen is the most dangerous room. Okay, I'm sorry, I've had enough of that. It's got my heart racing, and that's why finally, after years and years and years, I started bracing my furniture. I'm not done, but I did the thing that's behind my bed. Hey, that's a start, right? Surprisingly, I got one of these braces at Goodwill because someone with the right intentions bought it and never installed it. So good for me, right? But it still took me 5 years. And I put in some little latches in some of my cabinets too. There are all sorts of ways to keep your cabinets from flying open. I don't want to lose all of my fancy cologne. And I also don't want all of my dishes and all of my food to go flying to the floor. So for a long time, I had a bungee cord on it. Hey, better than nothing, right? But I finally did put some of those little latches in. They're not terribly cheap. They're these little seismic latches from Safety Proof, the same company that made that video. I hope they work, but it was definitely an improvement over the bungee cord because I don't want my place to look like this after an earthquake. And this was after the Ridgecrest earthquake. It's not only a mess, but you can really injure yourself from all of these broken items. And cleanup is really dangerous. Not only do you lose all of this valuable food and drinks, and maybe you've got chemicals mixing on the floor that shouldn't be mixing, but cleaning it up uses your precious water up and your paper towels and other stuff that you're really going to need and wish that you hadn't spent all on that one jar of ragu. Okay. So here's from the Earthquake Country Alliance. They show different kinds of latches that you can install, and some are very, very old fashioned, but they still are better than nothing. Okay. And then there's some cool new ones that you don't even know they're there until an earthquake. That's the fourth one from the left is a cool little latch that if you've got new cabinets, you can install those, and they're not too expensive. Okay, so your family emergency plan, remember, you may not all be together. Someday we're not going to all be just all in the same house 24 hours a day, right? So you've probably, if you've got kids in school, you've filled out something like this before. This is the LAUSD Student Emergency Instruction Form. But really, how much thought did you put into the emergency contacts, people who could pick up your kids after school? Think seriously about this. You might have a neighbor that you totally trust if you can't get there. And wouldn't that be a better person to put down than your grandparents in Scottsdale, Arizona? Just think about it. And part of your emergency plan is carrying the right kind of information around with you. And that might be important phone numbers that if your phone is broken or runs out of batteries that you need to get to, but it could also be medical information or just other important stuff that can fit in a wallet. Information that you really might need, and you'll find these in a lot of the emergency booklets where you can just print them out and fill it in. Other things like medications that you might need if you are non-responsive and somebody needs. Emergency kit. But believe me, after some of these disasters, you're mostly going to be using this kind of stuff, rolled gauze. And so knowing how to use that is going to be really important. And then also how to use cardboard and bed sheets and things like that, in case you've got sprains or breaks and just making injured people into happy campers like I was when I got my arm sling on this occasion, which of course was imaginary. And then you'll talk about search and rescue on April 17th. Here is my very non-professional search and rescue kit. But you know what? Because I was prepared with this, look at all of those N95 masks that I had before the pandemic. Because I was CERT trained and I also had toilet paper and I had Purell as well. It's the most Purell I've ever used in my life. And I've also got some other cool stuff in my CERT bag. And that includes things like a headlamp. So I can go through after a disaster and be hands-free as I do things like move around my neighborhood with my CERT team or with my neighborhood team and write down where the damage is. I've already printed out these block by block lists for my neighborhood because my printer's not going to work afterwards, and I'm not a very good sketch artist. I've also got an old-fashioned watch in my CERT bag because my Fitbit is going to run out of batteries. And then I did the CERT training, and please stay tuned because there will be some announcements, in the coming months about CERT training. Everyone is really excited to get that back going again. And we talked about Battalion 18. I'm so proud to be a member of the same battalion that West Adams is in, and it goes all the way to Century City. Thank you, Google Earth, for this wonderful imaginary photograph. And as part of CERT, we do these drills. We did this great one at Village Green. We did wonderful radio training, which, as you can see, is totally possible, socially distanced. And that's going to be on May 15th for you guys. And we need communications plans because there's only about 4 hours of juice in some of these cell towers. And then once those batteries run out, until they're on a generator, which is probably not going to happen very, very quickly, we're unable to communicate by the regular means. So we really need a way to be able to call for help and offer help and receive advice, and then just team up, share important information. So inexpensive FRS radios are a great way to do that. You don't necessarily need a radio to be able to talk to somebody 2 miles away. But especially in COVID, gosh, we need a radio to be able to just talk to somebody across the street without having to put a mask on and walk over there and knock on their door, right? So you'll find out more in the radio training about how our battalion plan really maximizes and makes use of people with more powerful radios who can then communicate out to a wider area. And Chin is showing his radio right now. So again, what's going to happen to you? We're going to go a little fast, but we're almost done here. So you need food and water for 14 days. There's people who say 3 to 14 days. Yeah, just aim for 14. That's 1 gallon per person per day. I'm lucky to live alone because that means that I've got 10 gallons right there in that one cubby. And I just use tap water and I replace it every couple of months, okay? But I mentioned if you need to tap your hot water heater, you need to know how to do that while the internet works, because that's how you're going to find out what to do. And you can also look in that fire department book. And if you've got any kind of storage space, especially in a garage, for example, you can store 55 gallons of water relatively cheaply. And I think it's gotten a little less expensive, maybe even than this. So work on your own list. Make sure that you've got all the supplies that you need. Make sure that you've got, a bag with your shelter-in-place supplies. And that should include things like, toilet paper, for example, and then also all the food that you might want to eat. And, maybe it's not just going to be that camping kind of food. Maybe it's stuff that you regularly eat that you can cycle through. And please don't have it all be, top ramen that's just full of salt and doesn't really give you the nutrition that you need, while also giving some consideration to sanitation and making sure that you've got a plan for how you're going to use the bathroom and how you're going to keep things sanitized around you. And that's where my Purell came out of when COVID started. Now, if you're unfortunate and you've got to evacuate, as we're told more than 200,000 people are going to have to, if your place is red tagged, you've got to have a plan for that. So what's that going to be? Are you maybe going to stay with a friend or a family member? Do you have a tent? Are you going to be able to maybe sleep on your own lawn or in your car, for example? Well, make sure that you give that some thought in advance, and also how you're going to care for your animals in that time. Because hey, staying alive is a wonderful thing, and being, having a plan with people and being able to make it through is great. But there's more than just that first day, which is why your go bag should really contain 3 days worth of supplies. And my go bag, it's the same bag I take camping, which means I have to empty it out every now and then, which is a really great exercise for reminding myself of what's in my evacuation bag or go bag. And if you've got pets, the fire department book's got some great considerations there. My go bag has a bunch of stuff. It's evolved since then. It's got batteries. It's got a picture of my sister and her kids who live right down the street. Because if I have to ask people if they've seen them, hey, it's good to have a picture printed out, right? And it's also got cash. They say you should have $200 to $300 per person in your cash stash. That's not going to be possible for everybody, unfortunately. But having some cash, whatever you can stash away, is a really good idea. And Dr. Lucy Jones said, she's really worried about earthquakes bankrupting people. And we've seen how our finances change in a disaster over the last year. One way you can address that is through insurance. I do not sell insurance, for the record. But I do have renter's insurance, and that's relatively inexpensive. Make sure you understand what's included in terms of earthquake damage in your insurance policy. And a great place to go is California Earthquake Authority. They've got pamphlets and information for whatever your living situation is, from renters on through to homeowners. Here's a bigger picture of that emergency preparedness guide or booklet from LAFD. And we talked also about the staying safe when the earth shakes, or where the earth shakes, from Earthquake Country Alliance. And I strongly encourage you to go to that website. And please attend the other sessions, because I bet a lot of what I told you is just, it's gone in one ear and out the other. This is all about repetition, about checking your own work, developing your own lists, your own plans, and talking about it with your community, so that it becomes part of a group plan, and not just your own isolated island plan. But hey, if that's all you can do, if all you can do today is just plan to store some water, and maybe take down the pictures hanging over your bed, and install like some picture hooks that aren't going to drop things on your head, then start there, and then just keep building, okay? And keep refreshing your supplies. Set it to every time you change your clocks, you change your emergency water and food, or put it in your Google Calendar. And just a reminder that our next session is going to be on March 20th. And that is with Marcy Sandell, and she is just wonderful. I have taken her training, so I encourage everybody to do that. And I think now we're just 3 minutes over, or 3.5, and it's time for Q&A.
Thank you, Conrad. Yeah, folks, please let us know, is there anything else you want to cover? We got a few minutes left. I'm going to drop the link to the next event, but please shout out if you got a question.
And I'm just going to jump in here very quickly, Chin here. I just want to say to everybody, I know we've put a lot of information out there today. It might feel overwhelming to you. Do everything in bits and pieces. And if you have questions, please reach out to us. Start out by reaching to Conrad, who is here right now.
Question. Yeah, Conrad.
Yeah.
Hey, in your video, the earthquake video, what was the magnitude of those 3 samples that you showed? Because
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Because the furniture was just falling all over people, and I mean, I know they were dummies, but still, what was the magnitude there?
I don't know. That was
Okay.
the sort of I think the shake simulator, obviously.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask the Seismolatch folks, or sorry, the whatever that company is called. I didn't ask them. They did send me the video so that I could share it. But earthquakes often exceed gravitational pull. So just we all need to think about, okay, our furniture that's so heavy right now, it's not going to be so heavy in a major earthquake. So that's why we hold on to it. But brace some stuff against the walls. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I wanted to say. So my building was built in 1927, and I'm going to guess a lot of people on this call have old walls where you put a stud sensor up against the wall and it doesn't work because you've got plaster walls. So I did a Google search because I said, I'm finally going to brace this stuff. And what they told me is, if you take a magnet and a piece of dental floss, like, it's got to be a pretty strong magnet. This is actually from one of those like conference name badges. Okay. You take a magnet and a piece of dental floss, and you drag it across the walls, and it'll start to want to stick whenever it finds a nail behind the plaster. And that was the nail that would hold the horizontal wooden strips against the studs before they put the plaster on. So there's horizontal strips with the nail. Well, the nail went right into the stud. So then you just put a Post-it there, and try it in another place, and put another Post-it there. Pretty soon you're like, okay, I feel pretty confident there's a stud here. So then you drill a little hole, and see if you've got those two different densities. See if you feel like, oh, I'm through the plaster and now I'm in wood. Well, then you know that you've put you've braced it to a really good place on the wall, and not just to the plaster. And it messes up your apartment, like I have, a lot less than putting in big bracket, the things that grip. I forgot what they're called. Anyway, Chen, do you want to moderate the Q&A?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
looks like you got it.
and you have a question for William Keith.
William, please go ahead.
Hi, Conrad.
Hi.
Earlier in the your presentation, somebody asked to put the liquefaction screen back up. But my question
Okay.
is, if you have it, is there a storyboard that you can share with the participants of the different threats that we have in our area?
I can actually share the ArcGIS map that I made. It's a little bit rough, but let me go ahead and share that. And I just have to find which tab it is. And then I'll put that link in there, and then you can kind of play around with my map. And if you have an ArcGIS account, I've just got the free kind, then you should be able to save it and put your own layers on if you want to. So I'll find that in just a second.
And then also for Chin or anybody else, if they know of any links for storyboards, I think that might help out the people looking at threats in their area. Thank you for taking my question.
You got it. And Tracy has a question.
Hi, Tracy. Oh, you're muted.
Hello, thank you so much for this. This has been very, very helpful.
Great.
And we live in a 1927 plaster
Yep.
house as well. So I love the bag. I don't know if I'll do it, but
It works.
The idea.
It worked.
The question I have is, you know how we all have our cell phones these
Yeah.
days? I don't know if it's a wives' tale, but I've kept our landline just for an earthquake. Can you tell me, is that dumb? Is that not really?
No,
true?
well, I mean, I guess if you have an internet phone, if your landline is hooked up to Comcast, for example, then that's one thing, or Spectrum. But if it's actually the old copper wire, that gets its power from the local station. So that may still work when nothing else does. No guarantee it's going to work, but it very well may. And as we saw after Northridge, they did work. Also, not every area is going to have the same shaking. So you might be in an area that, where your phone, where the phone facility actually isn't damaged, and it's still able to pump, to get power to your landline. So I haven't done the cost analysis. I kind of wish I still had my landline, but I don't.
Well,
but yeah.
I just say, well, we've been on our house here in West Adams for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, I think, or 20 years. And so we have AT&T, when it was, the guy would go on the outside of the house. And so that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Can I speak to that real fast?
So should I keep it or not, or does it matter?
Well, let's our CERT experts, I think, want to chime in here. So I heard Patrick and Chen.
And hopefully other people can be helped by my question.
I'm going to jump in and say, a few years ago, it was really great to have the hardwired phone, and I've still got a hardwired phone myself. But what you have to understand is that Pacific Bell and the other companies have dug up that old copper, those copper lines, which used to be so sturdy and resilient. They've replaced them with fiber optic lines, and those fiber optic lines are going to, when the earth moves, they're going to split. They're going to split like noodles. So now, I hate to say it, but for the most part, we're all on the same play right now. So it may not be as advantageous to have a inside landline. And like I said, I still do. Not the same, because they don't have that same copper wire out there. Patrick, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, from an IT perspective, AT&T is definitely not interested in maintaining those lines anymore. Mm-hmm. And in some areas they are degrading. I know, like Glendora, every time it rains, their internet goes down because those lines get flooded or something happens, their phone service goes down. And so it's really going to be a crapshoot if AT&T still has dedicated copper lines running back to their central office, or if you're running to a distribution center that's powered, and then it's going to be like a 4-hour battery if you're lucky. and then that goes down your SOL.
May I add something as a former AT&T employee?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The one thing that I value my landline for is, and if 911 is available, when you use your landline, they will know where you are. If you use your cell phone, they will not know. In most cases, when you use your cell phone, I believe when you use your cell phone to dial 911, it goes to the highway patrol first. So if you are at home and you need assistance and 911 is still working, when you pick up that phone, they know where you are. That's why I'll keep mine.
From a fire
Thank you
department
very much.
standpoint, if I could just chime in, Rita is absolutely 100% correct. As soon as we receive that 911 call from a landline, we know exactly where you're at. Otherwise, we have to triangulate your location, and it takes a while to determine where that cell site is that your cell phone's pinging off of.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That was a
Thank
great
you.
question.
Chin, what's our next question?
Oh, I don't know. We're done. Goodbye. No,
No.
I'm kidding. I'm
Petra.
kidding, everybody. Petra, you have the next question.
Okay, one, I want to let everybody know who may not know that you can save the chat. So things were put into the chat, and you're like, well, you know, you go to those towards the right, those 3 horizontal dots, and it'll say save chat. It'll be saved for you. You may have to do some rearranging so it's more easily read, but it will save everything that was put on the chat while you were on. Number 2 is, I don't know if I missed it or not, but I know I've talked to a lot of people who will say, well, that was let's say a 5.1 on the Richter scale. And so what's the big deal of a 5.2? And those numbers are exponential. So basically you're multiplying by 1,000. So even though it seems like a slight increase, it's not. It does make a difference. I'm done.
That's correct. All right. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Conrad while we've got him?
Or for anyone? I don't have all the answers. I'm just a team member, like hopefully the rest of you will all be soon.
I have another question, if I may.
Sure.
As a teacher, like I do my safety things at my schools, how much is going into the schools being prepared? Because that is going to be, and that is not even going to be, that is a social hub.
I mean, I will tell you, I'm not a parent, and so I haven't had a kid in LAUSD, for example, but I did speak with Wilshire Crest School with Principal Robinson there. And in fact, I did a little article on school preparedness for the Larchmont Chronicle, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago for back to school. And it's actually pretty reassuring that a lot of them do have really good plans. But when I mentioned the thing about the out-of-state contacts, that was where some of the schools are like, you know what, we could make a finer point of that, or a stronger point of the importance of that, and making sure that our parents really understand that they need to give this some thought, not just fill it out the day that it's due, you know. But as far as having some supplies, LAUSD seems to have done a really impressive job on that. I don't know that every school has done everything that they're supposed to, but I know that they have a communications network between the schools. I believe they've got radios, and they also have sort of fallback plans. So if they have to evacuate one site, they can move to another site. And I see chat going on right now. So someone else may know a lot better than I about that.
No, I know a lot. I just wanted to kind of send it out there, have it be mentioned. That's all.
Can
I think
ask
like
real quick, Petra, as an educator, have you ever encountered MySafe LA?
Yes.
Okay, so MySafe LA is a partner with the Los Angeles Fire Department, and they actually go to all the LA Unified schools and educate. They go right now they're targeting 2nd graders and 5th graders, and they do an incredible job giving them the foundation for preparedness. They give them projects, some homework things to do, things like exit drills in the home. They actually open up that discussion. So if we have parents out there that aren't as in tune to what the people who are on this call are, their child might actually spark that conversation at home. So My Safe LA is a great program. You can take a look at their website. They've got a lot of tools there available to you if you want to talk to your children in regards to preparedness at home as well.
No, I
And
used to
kind of-
have a disaster preparedness club, and I like My Safe LA. What I've done at the present school, for instance, where I am now as a librarian, I'm now a librarian, is to make it more an interactive thing that they can do in homeroom for the week. So it's still tech, but it's still just not a PowerPoint. And so, yeah, things have come a long way. I just wanted to mention it. Thank you.
And Petra, some of the CERT folks, some of the people on this call are, involved in the ongoing conversation about radio communications. And one thing that came up in a meeting was that people have had great results getting kids on radio networks, because that's such a perfect thing for like a fourth grader to do, walkie talkies. And some of these radios are, $20 a piece or 35 for a pair sometimes. These are the same radios that you can use to communicate with your neighbors. So if you get your kids doing it, training themselves, hey, that's a job for them, right? They can teach you how to use it. So
Yeah,
think
thank you
about
for that. That's a thought.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
All
I have a question, to actually a statement and a question. My name is Yolanda. I'm actually with the West Adams Neighborhood Council, the vice president of the council and the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So I just want to thank, first off, all of you guys that have put this together. It's amazing. One of the things that stands out to me is that we really should kind of also continue and figure out how we can have these how-tos, because there was so much information shared, kind of how do we do this? How do we, if we don't know how, get the help and the accessibility to do the valves, the water and the gas shutoffs? What's the best way to shop and how to shop? As it's a little overwhelming, so it would be great to kind of come back, maybe in addition to these classes, actually create an information class that'll help direct us so that we can navigate, and be more successful in making this happen. And also my question is in the alternative transportation area. How do you see that working? Because while our car might be filled with gas, we might not can drive on our streets. And I saw the scooter, and also I am an advocate, bicycling advocate, but also walking and any other areas that you can just tap into or share with us.
Well, I'll jump in and say that I've got, when I replace my bike tires, I save the old ones, I save the last set of tires, because I'm always thinking about, oh gosh, how am I going to do this in an earthquake or do that in an earthquake? So I know that I don't need gas for my mode of transportation, but if I don't have tires, I'm out of luck. I don't know. Does anybody else have any good ideas to share on the question?
Well, Conrad, I'll kind of jump in on the first part of Yolanda's question, which was, continuing this discussion. Please note, everyone who is here for the Neighborhood Team Program, these first 6 modules are just really the introduction. We plan to be here permanently, and we'll start helping you guys getting up to speed, and we'll continue our conversation with you guys on the West Adams Neighborhood Council on things like that, on helping you guys finding ways of, bringing vendors into the neighborhood and, practicing some of the things that Conrad and all the rest of us have talked about or are going to talk about. So don't worry. Today is only the first day of a very long and collective journey we're going to take together. So if you have questions or whatever, keep them coming, and we'll keep adding them to the program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Dorsey.
Hi, Conrad, how
Good to
are
see
you?
I'm good.
Good. I live in a building that is primarily seniors and vets that are disabled. And I'm really interested in learning on how to connect with my neighbors, because I don't see everyone, and especially now, we don't see anyone at all. But because the building is primarily seniors and disabled, there has to be a plan on how to help people when there is that kind of an emergency, because we will have not one or two, but maybe 10 or 12 people that really need really hands-on help and quickly. So I would hope that during the course of this, that we can talk about how to help people when you're in buildings such as this.
Well, I've done a senior facility training with Carolyn Burleson from Central Bureau. So I know that there is a curriculum. I would say that, you know, radios are a really great way to communicate. I don't know how well they'd go through the walls, but that could certainly be tested. But you should have a plan, and you should have ways that you guys can you know, communicate and interact and plan despite COVID. I don't know, Chen, Patrick, do you guys want to add on to that at all?
I want to jump in and say one good department to reach out to, which I know Carolyn would also, Carolyn, who we've been talking about, who is concerned with that. She is a senior citizen herself. She would definitely recommend that we also reach out to the Department of Aging. And so when we get to that point, that's one department I see us really teaming up with to work with you as well. Patrick, do you have anything to add to the discussion?
Sorry, seniors aren't my specialty.
Give it time.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe in
believe me,
4 years.
you get there really quick.
But Dorsey, go to Earthquake Country Alliance, because they, you know, a lot of people who are experts in these areas have put together, you know, the bare minimum fact sheets, like the things that really matter for different populations, you know, whether that's, like I said, diabetes, or people with pets, or people with horses, or senior citizens, or disabled. So I would encourage that you check that out, and I'll stick a link in the chat. I just need to find one. And
Thank you.
And one more thing I want to say is all of the ideas and concepts that have been kicked out today, we're keeping notes on that, because that is helping us tailor the program for your area's needs. So keep them coming. Are there any more questions out there?
I have a comment.
Yes, Rita.
In our block club, well, it's our neighborhood association between Western and Adams and Normandy and Jefferson, we are implementing a program with our block captains. We're going to scan the neighborhood with their prospective areas. We're going to get information on the seniors, and we're proposing this now. We're going to find out if they have disabilities, if they have someone to help them, is there someone in their home to help them, what their disability is, and the block captains will have that information. So if we have a major event, we can, you know, kind of key in on those people that really need the help, in addition to all of the things that the CERT people go through. You know, well, I'm a CERT person too, but you know, all of the things that you need to do to assist them to get some help to them. If it's, you know, maybe they just not being alone, or get them to a staging area, or whatever it's going to take. If they're, you know, a paraplegic, if they're on a walker, if they're on a cane, that type of information is what we're collecting.
I'd like to be a part of that.
And Rita, I'm going to say right off the top, on those residents who need additional attention, the elderly, those with special needs, medical issues. Every neighborhood, every organized neighborhood should have a finger on that pulse.
Babies as well. We're working on it. You know, a lot of the times maybe people don't want to give their personal information, and we respect that. We're just going to let them know that this is the reason that we're doing it. If they'd like to participate, fine. If not, okay. So that's a good idea for every neighborhood.
And I did just put a link. I actually found on Earthquake Country Alliance's webpage a PowerPoint presentation for seniors. I haven't looked at it yet, but you know, it's a great website. You could spend days on it, you know, just looking at all their wonderful resources, and they're good people too.
And where's that found?
It's earthquakecountry.org is the website. And if you do have the chat, it's just like 3 messages up in the chat. I put a link. There's a disability page, and that's where I found the seniors presentation.
Thank you.
I think we had one more question from Freddie, and Freddie, you can help us close out with that one.
Well, thank you, John. So I just wanted to pretty much respond to Miss, was it Dorothy or
Dorsey?
Dorset, yeah. So if you're living in a senior building, there's a lot of seniors in there, and we have a disaster. And if you're a CERT person over CERT trained, of course you need to assess yourself first. But in a situation like that, I think it would be a good idea to just knock on some doors, or if you have the telephone numbers, make a list of the handicapped, the severely handicapped, the bedridden, the wheelchair bound. Already have a list of them in your senior building, so that you know who to directly go to in the event of an emergency. I think that would be very helpful and very quick response.
Thank you.
That's just my thought. So I know a few seniors too, and I have a list with them, and so that's who I would go to. That's who I would call. After I assess myself first, make sure I'm okay, and then I start making my calls. So in your case, you live in a building with them already, so you can just go down the hall, knock on some doors, if you have up to 10 of them.
Well, what's interesting is now with the pandemic, everyone, we're away from one another, and you just don't go knock on somebody's door. So
this is an emergency, so that's a little bit different. Put your mask on, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, are you okay?" That's all I want to know.
No, I'm talking about how to get prepared for it before it happens. No, before a disaster happens. I mean, I have had CERT training before, but this is a new experience for me living in a senior building. I happen to be a senior.
Okay.
But it's also a new experience being in a building, and my mobility is perhaps better than some. And when you want to be able to help, this is one of the things that you want to know. Well, what is the best way, and how can we do that? If we've got like 5 people here that are in wheelchairs and you can't use an elevator, what do you do? And these are the kinds of things that I want to know.
So perhaps I misunderstood. I thought you were speaking of in the event of an actual emergency. How do you contact those people?
No, I think that I get that part, but I just know that there are things that we can probably do in advance of that, and we are on with the pandemic. But maybe one of the things that I could do, speaking out loud, is to get in touch with the building management and see if there isn't a way that we can coordinate how and what is going to happen in the event of a disaster. So that's absolutely part of that process too.
Or say one thing that we like to, or that I always like to bring up, I don't think it was my idea originally, but someone who has mobility issues is a perfect person to be monitoring the radio for information coming through the emergency channels, where they can, sit there with the radio, take notes, share it over the walkie-talkie to the neighbors and say, "Hey, I heard that there's going to be a Red Cross water distribution tomorrow morning at 10 at, such and such high school," for example, or dangers that are coming over the radio. Because those of us who can get around more easily and maybe doing some of the search and rescue, not listening to the news at that time. We need people to fill in all of those jobs. So I would say, if your neighborhood is getting organized, then you could put the call out to your neighbors and say, who wants to be part of this radio team? You don't have to leave your place. All you need to do is, buy an inexpensive radio and attend these neighborhood trainings that we're doing and be part of the team. And then maybe you can teach some other neighbors about what you learned and get them involved.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because you can't do it all yourself. And
No.
you may not be home, and I may not be home. I mean, that's what we learn in CERT is we plan for all eventualities, whether we are going to be part of the actual team the day that, you know, that stuff goes down, or not. You know, we need to have backups. So it's really about process and structure and those sorts of aspects of preparation, not just, oh, I'm the leader, and unless, you know, if I'm away, nobody's going to be able to do anything. It doesn't work that way.
No. I totally agree. And I like the idea of being a part of whatever happens. Because, well, this building is like a little tiny city. But thank you so much for doing this. It's good to see you. I'll see you next week or the week after.
It's going to be next month, and I'm dropping the page into the chat right now. I've shared it a few times before, so you might have already seen it. It's going to be next month, March 20th. We're hitting a first aid. It's going to be with Marcy from CERT, and Chin's going to be back. The gang's going to be back. We're going to keep the conversation going. You'll get an email from us shortly, and that email is going to have the recording. It's going to have some key things from the chat, and we're going to put our heads together and figure out maybe a Facebook group or some kind of community thing that we can all get on and begin to share information. Somebody dropped in the chat earlier, I think it was Nat, and she mentioned, or they mentioned, that it might be a good idea to figure out how do we buy things in bulk together for the community. So we're not all going out and purchasing things on our own, so we get the best of the best stuff. And these are all amazing organizing tactics we can all figure out as a community in the days and weeks to come. So folks, I'm gonna bring us to a close now. We are so appreciative that everybody's been able to hang out. We have very few people dropping off into the last half hour going over time. So it's been a behemoth of an afternoon, really fun. And we all dreamed of something like this happening, and now it's finally here. So yes, exactly. Applause to everybody, really big appreciation. Any final words from CERT, from our CERT team here?
You know
Just
what,
thank you.
Yeah, it's like, I just want, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us on a Saturday afternoon, middle of the afternoon, to have this many people come out. Shows how much you care about your neighborhoods and your neighbors. Hey, thank you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. I concur with that, Chin. Thank you so much. This is Freddie with the Battalion 18 West Adams area. Thank you guys for this opportunity. This was a great presentation today. Thank you, Conrad. You did a great job with the presentation today. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chief.
Freddie. Good to see you.
Thanks, Chief Moore. I seen Lise on there earlier. Hi, Lise. How you doing? Good to see you. All right. And John, good to see you, sir.
Yes, you too.
And I just want to say thank you. This was wonderful. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andres, for the interpretation. Spanish language, bilingual.
Thanks, Andres.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, you're welcome.
See you at church sometime, Freddie.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
I don't know when, but
I see you, Tony. I see you. I see you. God bless you.
Care.
God bless you.
God bless all.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, everybody.
Ben, do you have time for a quick question afterwards?
I'll give you a call later this afternoon if I can.
Okay.
You got it.
All right, thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, is that